Well, they cut themselves to the bone. Now what? Hello, my gaming brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host here at QuickBird Gaming. Appreciate you tuning in for this episode of QuickBird News, where we talk about all the gaming news of the week that's fit to cover. This week's episode is going to cover the 5th through the 11th of July. Obviously, the biggest news of the week is everything that's going on over at Xbox and all of the studio transition, the games that are being affected. I'm going to try and give you the most up-to-date coverage we have as of Saturday, the 11th of July. Some things have happened, some things have changed. I'm going to try and give you the most current version that we know of. I do have a few stories that aren't related to Xbox. If you want to come over here to this timestamp right here, you can jump ahead to the non-Xbox stories. And of course, as usual, each story that I cover is timestamped in the description box down below. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's jump into the Xbox stories because we got a whole lot to talk about. Okay, I'm just going to start with the biggest item from all of this, and this is from Game Informer from the 6th of July on Monday. Xbox parts ways with 5 studios, over 3,000 layoffs announced. From what I understand, they're cutting ties with about 1,600 people immediately or have already done so, and another 1,600 over the next year are going to go as well. They announced they're splitting from 5 of their development studios. CEO Asha Sharma sent a lengthy message to the entire team detailing her previously announced plans for a reset of the brand. I'm not going to go into her whole message. I'll link it below if you haven't already seen it, want to read it, but basically says it's all business speak for we're going to cut, and try and save this brand. Whether they can do it or not remains to be seen. But I'm going to jump straight down to the studios. Okay, Compulsion Games, which is South of Midnight, We Happy Few, and Double Fine, which is Psychonauts, publishers or developers, they're going to become independent again and retain their IP and game catalogs. So they're leaving the Xbox umbrella. They're going to go independent. They're going to be publishing, doing their own thing, and they're taking all of their IPs with them. So while they were not cut or shut down, they're going to be on their own again. Ninja Theory, which is Hellblade, the DMC Devil May Cry, and Undead Labs State of Decay, have entered terms to join new ownership with funding to complete and grow Senua and State of Decay 3. From what I've read, and this mostly came from trolling financial websites, not necessarily gaming ones, they have been purchased, but the buyer remains unknown. I'm sure we will learn soon enough as all the fine print and all the details of contracts are signed, but they apparently have reached a deal, and those guys are going to go, and they're going to take their games with them as well. Okay, then it comes down here and it says the fate of Arcane, Dishonored, and Deathloop is less clear. And I think because Arcane is out of Lyon, France, and because they're in the EU, there's some different labor laws there. They're having to negotiate some more bureaucracy, but they're going to be leaving too, from what I understand. It's still to be determined if they're going to go do their own thing or if they are going to be bought by somebody. Then they say layoffs will hit other studios such as Activision, Bethesda, ZeniMax, Blizzard, King, Mojang. And yeah, here's where it said 1,600 terminated today and then 1,600 more later. So that's kind of the bottom line. This article talks a little bit more about some of the cost-cutting measures they're planning on doing. Sharma really wants to streamline the studio. Whether or not it'll be enough remains to be seen, obviously. But these are the facts, and this is what we know so far. None of these studios have technically been closed. This is a little bit different than a year ago when Microsoft laid off a bunch of people and Xbox did, and they closed the initiative, and that took the Perfect Dark remake with it. They shut down Everwild at Rare and the ZeniMax MMO that was being worked. They shut down and killed some games then. These games technically have not been killed yet, but they are not going to be part of Xbox anymore. That same day, on Monday, the 6th of July, we have a tweet from Sharma that I bring you courtesy of Insider Gaming. The CEO confirms no publicly announced game cancellations despite the Xbox layoffs. Sharma has confirmed that none of the publicly announced first-party titles have been canceled. And down here, this is the actual verbiage of the tweet. None of our first-party publicly announced games is being canceled as part of this reduction. Now, I find this kind of interesting and somewhat encouraging. Now, it's a multifaceted statement because obviously games like Senua from Ninja Theory and the new State of Decay are going to go with their studios as they are sold off and leave the company. it's interesting to me that Blade from Arcane has been publicly announced, but it is apparently not being canceled either. I wonder if it is also going to then, Arcane is going to go do its own thing, or they're going to they're going to go with it. Means Blade may still happen. But the other games that have been announced by first-party studios, obviously Halo, Campaign Evolved, which is due to come out in a couple weeks after this, as of the posting of this video. You have later this fall, you have Gears of War E-Day, and I think Minecraft Dungeons 2 from Mojang. Those are coming this fall. They're apparently still going. Obviously, Fable from Playground, Clockwork Revolution from In Exile. Those are scheduled for next spring, and I think Spyro, which is being done by Toys for Bob. I think that's the name of the studio. They're not strictly an Xbox studio, but they're contracted to work on the Spyro game, which is an Xbox property. So none of those games are being canceled right now. It's very possible they could go through this whole round of reductions and the games will still be coming out, which to me, for us as consumers at the end product, it's a good thing, right? Okay, obviously ZeniMax and Bethesda are huge names under the Xbox umbrella, and they were hit by these layoffs. So we're just going to cover a couple articles that shows what they're looking at. I'm going to start with this Video Game Chronicle article from Tuesday the 7th. Bethesda boss tells staff it will restructure around our strongest franchises after cuts. Bethesda will reportedly rebuild around Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Doom, Quake, and Wolfenstein. This also follows some noise from Saharma that they were going to be dedicating more resources to what they consider to be their tentpole franchises. And Fallout and Elder Scrolls were kind of among the two that people were looking at in that case. Clearly, those are Bethesda's biggest. Doom, Quake, and Wolfenstein, they are big, but I don't think they're quite as big. They've fallen off. But it makes me wonder how well things are going to go with that. We go to this Eurogamer article, which is from Thursday, July 9th. Even Elder Scrolls 6 is affected by Xbox layoffs. Say Bethesda employees as key people are let go and morale bottoms out. Let's see. Per this report, the latest revelation comes from multiple staff at Bethesda who have told IGN they expect a substantial and cascading effect in the long development Elder Scrolls 6. Per the report, anonymous employees at Bethesda say more than 50 staff, including key high-performing people in the trenches, have been impacted. These layoffs have caused morale to plummet and will expect to heighten the chances of crunch and delay the game to some degree. And they go down and they talk a little bit about who was being cut from this. I've seen a lot of reports. I've seen that, 18, 20, 25-year veterans of multiple games have been let go, which is unfortunate. It makes me wonder, as always is the case with these, if there weren't other middle managers they could cut. And it makes me wonder what their thinking is. Is this so they think they can do it faster and cheaper with younger programmers or with H-1B1 visas? We won't know this until more comes out, but this is a problem. And over at this PC Games In article from the same date, or I'm sorry, this is from Tuesday, July 7th, not the 9th. ZeniMax reaffirms commitment to Elder Scrolls Online as Xbox layoffs cut deep. So they cut people from ESO, their Elder Scrolls Online. I haven't seen specifically that Fallout 76 has seen substantial cuts, but who knows? It's hard to say what's happening there. Now, there has been some confusion with some contradictory information. By example, I'm going to point to this IGN article from Friday, the 10th of July. id Software issues statement following Xbox layoffs, saying it's back to the size it was when it made 2016's Doom. Let's see. On Wednesday, a notice was filed that a bunch of people had been laid off. Okay, they were cuts were part of the business. Some have expressed concern that id Software would be unable to lead development on the new teams in its current state. But here is from their own Twitter page. Okay, while our studio is impacted, these changes have spread across teams. We still have the crew we need to build. The team today is about the same size as when we were making Doom 2016. Okay, then this says id and Xbox push back on the suggestion. There's essentially no one left at the company working on id Tech. The game engine, it and fellow Bethesda-owned studio Machine Games used to build their games. Machine Games is rumored to be working on Wolfenstein 3. Xbox confirmed to IGN there are still dozens of people working on id Tech across multiple locations, and that previous reports that there was only one person left in Texas are inaccurate. Now, the id Software was hit with pretty hard layoffs here. They, from what I understood, it could be as much as half of their studio was gone, and some people were saying that they had been reduced to a support staff level only, which means that we wouldn't necessarily be seeing any new Doom games. Though I think that they are still working on releasing DLC for Doom Dark Ages. This was still supposed to be an expansion for that coming out. So, but my point is that originally they were saying that they had been cut down to nothing, and now the reports are coming out that saying that's maybe not quite true. That's why this is hard to keep up, because the information is constantly changing on us. And here's a second example. This PC Gamer article from Wednesday the 8th. Obsidian is reportedly making a new Fallout game headed by Josh Sawyer after Microsoft pulled the plug on an Avowed sequel. 25% of the studio's workforce was let go during the layoffs, and multiple games in development were canceled. And it says, okay, a Warren report shared by GameFly. Okay, this talks about the people being laid off. The sequel to Avowed is one of the multiple unannounced games in development that have been canceled during the bloodletting. Instead of that, a new Fallout game is reportedly being headed up by Obsidian design director Josh Sawyer. Now, I'm just as an aside, well, no, we'll get into that in a minute. I don't want to get distracted here. Let's stay with the subject. Okay, so they're saying that that's what's going on. Well, that was Wednesday. Now, on Friday, this Insider Gaming article says Obsidian reportedly still working on Avowed 2 after cancellation, according to new information. Okay, they said on July 8th it was reported it was shifting its focus, be focusing on a new Fallout, and canceled plans for Avowed to have a sequel. As with everything in gaming right now, change is so rapid that everything remains fluid. That's what I was just saying. 2 days later, it seems that even though Avowed 2 has been canceled, the team working on it will continue their work in hopes that the project may be revived. Information comes from Jason Schreier, the person who did the initial Avowed news. He's a games reporter over at Bloomberg. In a new video, Schreier says the game is further in development than people might expect. The hope is it will be so close to being finished that perhaps it will be released after all. And here is Schreier's quote. They have a small team that was working on Avowed 2, is going to keep working on it, even though it's canceled, while they wait for other projects like Fallout to be ready for them. And maybe in hopes of getting it uncanceled. I think their hope is they'll get it so close, Xbox will look at it and say, yeah, you can finish and release this. It won't cost that much more time to finish it. So the information around all of these closures and everything is, like I said, is changing so quickly, it is hard to keep up. That's why you have me here to try and deliver the most up-to-date information. So is Avowed 2 canceled? Who knows? It may still come out. All right, I'm going to break in here just for a second and go back to the point I started to make when I interrupted myself there. And that is talking about Fallout going over to Obsidian and just in general what I think is going on here. I'm really starting to wonder if there's not a high-level pivot at Xbox and at Bethesda a little bit away from Elder Scrolls and to try to move Fallout into their prime position. Despite the enduring success of Skyrim and its multiple incarnations and the huge player base it still maintains, say that 3 times fast, thanks to its modding community and just the dedicated players, I'm not certain that Xbox isn't trying to kind of move Fallout ahead of them in terms of priority. Todd Howard has said for years they weren't going to work on Fallout 5 until they had Elder Scrolls 6 out. And now, but this is, I wonder really if with Saharma leaning on the studio, that might be overcome by events and they might change what they're talking about here. For one, they've got the momentum with the TV show. Season 3 has just started filming. Will probably be out later next year, which means that if they can start gearing Fallout news with the show's release, that is a big draw. And there's virtually no momentum in Elder Scrolls. It was announced in 2018 with that teaser. Now we're looking at 8 years with nothing. And I just don't see it. There's no rumor saying they're moving some studio to work on an Elder Scrolls game. Now, specifically about Obsidian and Fallout, obviously, they made Fallout New Vegas, and from what I read, the total dev time on that was under 2 years, that Obsidian really went hog wild, and just produced that. So it is feasibly possible to have a Fallout spinoff game. And from the rumors I'm hearing is they're actually looking at something that would be considered a sequel to New Vegas. It's conceivably possible that they could do something quickly. Will they, though? Most game development cycles are 4 to 6 years now, for AAA studios. So even if they started this week, basically when Sharma gave them the direction, we could be looking at a while. Now, does this not mean Bethesda might just give them the latest iteration of the creation engine and tell them to go nuts? Could they produce something in a couple years? Possibly. And especially if there's a focus on it with money and with pushing other projects down the priority list, it's possible. And, as a Fallout stan, I'm going to say the idea of more Fallout games is my favorite franchise. I won't say that I'm not pleased about that, but I'm keeping my expectations tempered. We've just heard too much, too many times, and been disappointed by things. Like last year, Fallout 4's anniversary edition that just really was not a good value, I don't think, for the community and the players. So I'm keeping my expectations tempered about this. I'm just going to kind of keep my ear to the ground. I would love for more good Fallout games to come out. There's still persistent rumors, and I didn't pull up an article for it, but there's still persistent rumors that there's a Fallout 3 remaster coming. Journalists are claiming to have seen footage of it. TBD, if that actually happens. It could be something they shadow drop like they did the Oblivion remaster. And that would be cool if it happened, but I'm not going to hold my breath, and I certainly don't have any insider sources telling me anything. So we're just going to have to see, and I'm not expecting a whole lot. Even if Obsidian could develop a new game in 2 years, do they have that long to prove something workable before Microsoft decides to axe more positions in studios? That's really the question. Okay, back to the news. All right, I want to move past Xbox and talk about a few other stories of things that happened this week. I'm going to start with this Insider Gaming article from Friday, 10th of July. Assassin's Creed Black FLag Resynched has surpassed 2 million copies sold. Now, I don't think this was this big of a shock. I think people expected this game to do well. Obviously, it's got a bit of a nostalgia bait. The original Black FLag is arguably the best of the old AC games. It's got a lot of fond memories behind it, and a lot of people were really looking forward to this. Now, there was some controversy when this game dropped. Dropped for $60 as a remake, and it also came $60 American and came with $85 American of DLCs, which are really more microtransaction add-ons to the game. From what I understand, absolutely none of them are necessary to complete the game, but some of them do give tangible benefits, your perks to your skills, and there's a map pack that allows you to see where collectibles are and so on. So there was some fuss about that. Some people have had some performance issues, but by and large, the game reviews have been pretty good. They started off kind of negative. They moved up to about 75% positive over on Steam. If I look at the player base, so here's the game. And it's about 65,000 now. On Saturday evening, it was almost 100,000 earlier. The peak a couple of days was right under 100,000. So there are a lot of people playing this. And, what can I say about Ubisoft? Good for them. This nostalgia is always something you can nurse, but it's only something you can nurse for so long before you run out of properties. I think this will be a benefit to them. However, given recent history, I don't expect them not to squander any momentum and money they make out of this. I still think they're going to screw it up. But AC Black FLag Resynched is out. People are enjoying it by and large, and I hope that they continue to do so. Next up is this article from Games Radar from Wednesday the 8th. Over 2 years since launch, Palworld hits 40 million players right before its 1.0 release, and now has 8 million more players than Pokemon Red, Blue, and Green. And if you've been watching me at all, you know how I feel about Nintendo and kind of their isolationist attitudes. So I am glad to see this. I'm glad to see that Pocket Pair appears to be winning their lawsuit against the lawsuit that Nintendo brought against them, and that this is now, as of Thursday the 9th, Palworld left early access. It's now in its 1.0 form, and it's now fully playable. did not change the price. They left it at $30 American after they left early access, but this is really cool. 2.5 years since its early access launch, Palworld has passed 40 million players right before its release, a number so impressive it widens the gap between it and the most popular Pokemon games in history. So that it's just really awesome. And there's their tweet. They've just really done well. I'm glad to see it, and I'm glad people are supporting them. And I can't wait to see what else Pocket Pair does in the future. I bring up this article for exactly one reason, and that is to show you that your voice does matter. This article from DualShockers from Friday, the 10th of July. College Football 27 folds under pressure over microtransactions. Okay? It says the article says that that DualShockers' own Ethan Krieger had the pleasure of reviewing this year's game. EA Sports College 27 is fun to play when you're actually on the field and engaging the game, but there's too much going on in the field to look past anymore. Okay? The biggest issue with the game is the game's predatory microtransactions, of which there have been far too many. Public outcry has been very vocal, and it seems like EA has been listening. In an announcement on social media, the EA Sports College Football account said it will be removing all paid progression options. So, and then an article says on the morning of July 11th, so at the day after this video is posted, EA Sports will remove all paid progression options from the Road to Glory and Dynasty. Okay. They also had the team is moving fast to respond to feedback in game, and more communications are expected next week to share the overall goal for College Football 27. You can make a difference. Your voice does matter. When you have a problem with what the gaming industry is doing, speak out. We're not going to win every fight. We're probably not going to win the one with PlayStation and physical media, but you can make a difference. Speak with your voice and speak with your wallet. That is the only power we have, so make sure you use it. Well, I had some other stuff to talk about, but you know what? I think I'm just going to finish with this article for this week, just because it feels fitting. Dad throws 13-year-old son's Switch out car window. Father has gone viral after throwing his son's Nintendo Switch console out the window while on a ride. The man claimed his son had disrespected him during the trip, and he called his son's bluff out by throwing out the console. Fuck around and find out. I mean, what else can you say? The article goes on to say that other parents had chimed in with similar stories, and then there were detractors who talked about anger management issues, and of course, because it's the internet, the whole thing devolved into kind of a shit show. But I just thought this was interesting, and sometimes parenting techniques vary from situation to situation. I know my father would have done something very similar. All right, we're going to call this video here. I've run long the last couple of weeks, so we're going to keep this one a little shorter. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please consider dropping a like on it, subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate that. If you have a comment on any of the stories I covered, drop it down below. I do read all comments. I try to respond to as many as I can. Tell me what you think about everything going on at Xbox. Do you think they're going the right direction, wrong direction? You think I'm right about Fallout? Let me know. I love to hear from you all. So I thank you in advance for the engagement. Don't forget to hit that bell so you're notified every time a new Quick Bird video comes up. All right. We're going to call it quits. Like I said, I will be back next week with more Quick Bird news because you know, this industry is just going to continue to go crazy, and we will always have a lot to talk about every week. So I will see you next week. Until then, you all go out there, live your best lives, and you all stay gaming.